I wish we could do like a tribute to this show. On My Block, Season 4. It's over. The show has finally come to an end. It's sad. I love these characters. We love these characters. But was this season good? Let's talk about it. What is up, Netflix fans? Welcome back to my channel. We have been covering this show heavily for the past few seasons, and the finale, really the ending of Season 3, was just wild. Kept everyone on their toes. Were we getting a Season 4? We're going to talk about this spoiler-free in this video. If you guys would like to see a spoiler talk, be sure to drop your thumbs up down below. Let me know. Did you like this season? Let's do it. So Season 4 finds our friends 2 years later, having gone their separate ways. When a secret is unburied, they quickly learn you can't run from the past, and they will have to stick together to survive. So Monse, Ruby, Jamal, Cesar, Jasmine, Abuela, spooky. This cast, these characters, I mean, they will go down as some of the most iconic characters from Netflix lore, if you will. And On My Block is one of those shows that evokes so many emotions because it's always done a wonderful job of beautifully balancing seriousness and really heavy character moments that deal with things that people have to go through in real life, and that is mostly handled beautifully in the show. But then you have the quirkiness and those moments that come in and make everything just a bit lighter when they can become too much, right? And these characters, up and down to a T, they are and always have been presented to us in a way to break the tension when they need to, but keep that seriousness as we progress. And Season 4 keeps those character traits and characteristics as consistently as you would hope, even though there is a massive time jump this time around. We saw the ending, right? 2 years later. Where are our characters now? I don't want to talk about it too much, but we do know just from seeing everything on its surface, Ruby and Jamal have had a bit of a fallout in terms of their friendship. They're on opposite sides of the spectrum here, not only mentally, they're actually running against each other in a bit of a political showdown at their school, and we get some confrontations, and obviously Jasmine is on Ruby's side. This season heavily deals with their relationship, not only the ups and downs of their relationship, but what they have to go through individually when they're not constantly with each other. And I will fully admit that was an aspect of the show that I was excited about to see that explore. Now that we can go full into that, it was one that became repetitive in this season. Yes, of course, it's a relationship. We have to explore the ins and outs, but it started to drag at a point, and they're, back and forth, and really the fallout of everything that happens between them. I was like, okay, I feel like we could shift the focus just a bit more to this over here, and we eventually do, especially halfway through the season. Their relationship is definitely heavily explored. Monse doesn't really come into the picture until a few episodes in, and at a point I'm like, okay, is she going to show up at all, right? I really missed her presence, but I was enjoying getting to catch up with their characters. And again, we have the time jump, right? The fact that we can see that there was a period that we're not filled in on as an audience. How have these characters changed? How are their interactions going to be different in this season? And they are different. Now, obviously, when you get back together with old friends, eventually you could fall back into things, but it does take a bit to maybe not get to that point, because do they ever get back there? I guess you got to watch to find out. But it does take a bit to really settle in terms of not only their relationships, but the story as a whole. And I'm not going to use the word aimless, because that's not what this season is. I love the characters, so I'm going to enjoy watching. But out of all of the seasons that I've seen for On My Block, this was the one to where I couldn't really get a clear picture as to where they were going until a bit later on in the season. And of course, we have our tragic things that happen and certain fallouts between friends, this and that. So that's enough to kind of get us going and maintain the interest in what this show is bringing us. But other than the reason why they come together, which seems like it's solved fairly quickly, I was thinking to myself, could they just have ended it with that final clip we got in Season 3? Would I have been fully satisfied? Well, not necessarily, especially with Caesar's character where he ended up, right? But to see that end on that level and get fans so emotional, and then just to kind of come back to this world and see where certain characters end up and then get more tragedy and more heartbreak, I'm like, oh man, I don't know if this was the 100% best decision, and especially since this season there isn't as much of a clear focus as other seasons, which at points kept me a bit more distant than I have been, not only because, these characters are not a lot different, but different enough because of this time jump, but also because I believe the plot is maybe a bit weaker this time around. Now, there's not a lack of moments and scenes and interactions between characters that fans are just going to eat up. Every ounce of that they're going to eat up. So that was awesome. Cesar and Oscar, spooky. I love a good brother relationship, right? A story that can really break you, but at the same time make you feel like this sense of hope. And their constant back and forth, especially at the beginning of this season, was just everything, right? And it's so funny to see that role reversal now. You got a taste of that at the end of season 3, but Cesar, he's just a completely, not different, because it makes sense as to his arc and what we find out he had to go through, but he's so drastically different than where I expected him to be. About halfway through season 3, I said, oh, he's obviously on the right path. Well, was he? And then you have Spooky, who's done a complete 180 with his life, and it's wonderful to see. But of course, with that, you're going to have so much that happens with navigating the inner city and who they have allegiances with, the betrayal, and everything that comes along with that. That was my favorite part of this season. Then you have Monse that comes along, and things have changed in his life, so him seeing her now has really impacted him in a way that we never really pictured seeing him like this, feeling like that with her in his life. And it's a lot of emotions. It's an extremely emotional show in general, but this season is filled with things that even when I was having a couple of issues with the story here and there, I would always gravitate back to and say, I'm loving what's going on screen. And I would be remiss if I didn't mention Jamal in more detail, because obviously Ruby and Jasmine, they're having their back and forth. And Jamal, eventually, when they begin to have interactions in the show, he just kind of feels like the odd man out, right? He's done a lot since the last time we've seen him. Some very interesting things he has divulged in, but it's so odd seeing him not really have a role or a place until later on in the season. We still love him. He's one of my favorite characters in general, maybe my favorite character in the entire show. And his interactions, especially with Abuela, were just, top notch. She's fantastic. He's fantastic. And this time, which I really enjoyed, the parents are getting in on things just a bit more. They play a bigger role. They've always been kind of subjected to play a background role in the series for the most part, but they are much more in the forefront, especially halfway through the show. And speaking of halfway through the show, there's something that happens that just, broke me. There's actually 2 or 3 things throughout this season. Broke me entirely. I didn't know what to do with myself. I didn't know how to handle what had just happened, and knowing these characters, loving these characters, you're going to get those moments, and let me just tell you, I don't know if you're ready for those moments. I don't know if I was ready for those moments. I talked about the balance just a bit earlier and how this show has always managed to do pure heartbreaking emotion, tragedy with funny and quirky and silly, and the jokes, as always, the quirkiness, the character interactions, the back and forth, dealing with high school things, the friendships, the allegiances, Jamal having all of these different friends, but does he really have someone who cares about him on the level of what Ruby did, on the level of what his gang did? I loved seeing them back together on screen, but at the same time, it was interesting seeing where they were. That balance, it was almost like they had too much to do this season. I do think they managed to pull it off at the end of the day. I really do. But man, at points, I'm feeling this immense level of heartbreak, and then at other points, I'm laughing, and I don't know if there was too much one side, too much of the other in season 4, but it's almost like you had to deliver on those character moments to appease fans. Austin, how does it end? Is it satisfying on the level that we wanted it to be? I believe that it is. I enjoyed the progression of the show, got much more into it as I learned what this season was all about. And again, it takes a bit to get there. I was locked in the first couple episodes, mostly because I loved the characters, but I wasn't all there on the storyline. Storyline continues to get better, and as it progresses, we get to an ending that I think will satisfy fans. It won't have the shock factor of the 2-year gap at the end of Season 3 and learning all of those things, but it will have that satisfying, okay, I can't believe it's over, and it's sad that it's over. It really is. I wish this could have continued even longer, because no other show, in my opinion, on Netflix does what On My Block can do and deals with real-life things that On My Block deals with. Gang violence, all of these just really important and integral elements that I believe were handled really well. Not the best that we've seen in Season 4 compared to the other seasons, but really, really well. Before I give you guys my score, I want to say thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, let me know. Drop your thumbs up down below. While the balance of humor and heartbreak may not be perfect in this season, there are more than enough scenes and moments that will satisfy longtime viewers of one of the best series on the platform. And again, I can more easily forgive its flaws because I just love these characters so much. I'm going a 78% for my score On My Block Season 4. I can't believe it's over. I feel like we have to talk about this in more detail. Let me know down below. I appreciate you guys for sticking with me through all of these seasons that we have reviewed on this channel. And I want to know, what is the best season of On My Block? The absolute best one. All right, guys. See you soon.